The bustling hotel lobby fell silent as the argument escalated. A woman wearing a stunning emerald green hijab stood firm at the reception desk, her deep brown eyes blazing with indignation. Despite her poised demeanor, the clerks, a pair of young, smug individuals, smirked dismissively. "I'm sorry," one of them drawled, clearly not sorry at all. "We're fully booked. Perhaps there's a motel down the street that could better accommodate someone like you." The words hung in the air, dripping with venomous implication. A murmur rippled through the small crowd gathered in the lobby. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others watched with a voyeuristic curiosity, phones discreetly recording the scene. The woman's knuckles turned white as she clutched her handbag. "Someone like me?" she repeated, her voice calm but steely. "I have a reservation. You checked my name and confirmed it just minutes ago." The second clerk, a tall man with a slicked-back haircut, leaned on the counter with exaggerated laziness. "Mom, we've been over this. We can't find your reservation anymore." "Maybe you made a mistake." Her gaze didn't waver. "I have an email confirmation. Would you like to see it again?" The clerk sighed dramatically. "It's irrelevant. Even if you had a reservation, our manager reserves the right to refuse service, and he doesn't think this hotel is the right fit for you." Gasps echoed through the room as his words landed like a slap. Before she could respond, a low voice cut through the tension. "What's going on here?" Heads turned as a tall man in a crisp navy suit strode into the room. His presence commanded attention, his every step measured and deliberate. The clerks stiffened, their smugness replaced by unease. The woman turned to the man, her expression momentarily softening before sharpening again. The man glanced at her, then back at the clerks. His voice was calm but firm. "I'll ask again. What is G? Owing on here?" The first clerk stammered. Nothing, sir. This lady was just leaving." The man's piercing gaze didn't waver. "Leaving? Why would she leave? I believe she has a reservation." We couldn't find it," the second clerk interjected hastily. And she was being difficult." The man's expression hardened. "Difficult?" He turned to the woman. "Is that true?" She met his gaze evenly. "No. I provided my confirmation, but they refused to honor it. They also said this hotel isn't the right fit for someone like me." A collective intake of breath swept through the room. The man's jaw tightened, and his voice dropped a degree colder. "Did they now?" Before the clerks could respond, he stepped closer to the counter, pulling a sleek black card from his pocket and sliding it across the desk. "Run this." "Now." The clerks hesitated, their faces pale. The first one finally picked up the card, squinting at the embossed name. His eyes widened in recognition, and his hands began to tremble. Mr. Hughes," he stammered. "We didn't realize." The man, the new owner of the hotel, cut him off with an icy glare. "You didn't realize what?" His voice carried the kind of quiet fury that chilled everyone in the room. Turning to the woman, he said, "My apologies, Mom. This hotel is most certainly the right fit for you. Let's make sure you're properly accommodated." The clerks exchanged panicked looks, their arrogance dissolving into desperation. The room held its breath, waiting for the fallout. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories. 3 hours earlier, the atmosphere in the hotel lobby had been nothing short of vibrant. The crystal chandeliers sparkled, reflecting the warm afternoon sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Families, couples, and business travelers moved about, their voices blending into a low hum of activity. Among them was Leila, the woman in the emerald green hijab, arriving with her suitcase in tow. She had traveled nearly 8 hours by bus for this trip, eager to attend a conference on social equity and inclusion. Despite her exhaustion, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her hijab framing a serene face that betrayed no signs of the weariness she felt. Approaching the front desk, she was greeted by the first clerk, who plastered on a thin, disingenuous smile. "Welcome to the Ridgewood Hotel. How may I assist you?" Leila returned the smile, handing over her identification and reservation details. "Good afternoon. I have a reservation under the name Leila Asghar." The clerk's fingers danced across the keyboard as he searched the system. After a moment, his smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Ah, I see it here. Give me just a moment." Leila nodded, her gaze wandering to the elegant decor of the lobby. She couldn't help but feel a twinge of pride for affording a stay in such a prestigious hotel, even if it was just for one night. A second clerk approached the desk and whispered something to the first. Leila noticed their furtive glances in her direction. Her stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. When the first clerk returned, his tone had shifted. "I'm sorry, Mom. There seems to be an issue with your reservation. It's, not in the system anymore." Leila frowned. "That's strange. I received an email confirmation just yesterday. Would you like to see it?" The second clerk, taller and more assertive, interjected, "It won't matter. Sometimes these things happen. We're fully booked now, so there's nothing we can do." Leila pulled out her phone, opening the email with her reservation details. "Here it is," she said, showing them the screen. "My reservation is confirmed. Room 312. The second clerk's face tightened. "Like I said, we're full." The first clerk's gaze darted nervously between Leila and his colleague. "I'm sorry, Mom," he repeated, his tone lacking sincerity. "Maybe you can try somewhere else?" Leila's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Are you saying you're denying me service despite my valid reservation?" The taller clerk smirked. "Look, let's not make this a big deal. It's just one night. There's a motel about 2 blocks down. They should have space." Several heads in the lobby turned at his comment, and Leila's cheeks burned. She glanced at the guests watching the interaction, some of whom seemed uncomfortable while others openly stared. "Is there a manager I can speak with?" she asked, her voice steady but firm. "The manager's busy," the second clerk snapped. "You'll have to leave." Leila stood her ground. "I'm not leaving until I get the room I paid for." The clerks exchanged a look, their expressions shifting from dismissive to irritated. The first clerk opened his mouth to respond when a new voice interrupted. "Is there a problem here?" The clerks froze. Turning, Leila saw a man in a tailored navy suit approaching. His polished leather shoes clicked against the marble floor, and his confident stride silenced the murmurs in the lobby. The man exuded authority, his piercing gaze sweeping over the scene. "Sir," the taller clerk began nervously, "it's nothing. Just a misunderstanding with a guest." The man stopped in front of the desk, fixing his steely gaze on the clerks. "What kind of misunderstanding?" Leila spoke up before they could respond. "They're denying me my room, despite my confirmed reservation, and they suggested I stay at a motel instead." The man's jaw tightened as he turned back to the clerks. "Is that true?" The first clerk stammered. We thought there was a mistake. The system, it doesn't show her reservation anymore." The man's gaze didn't waver. "Did you verify it manually? Check the email she provided?" The taller CL, Erk's confidence wavered. "We didn't think it was necessary. The system's usually accurate." The man turned to Leila. "May I see your email confirmation?" She handed him her phone, and he studied the screen briefly before nodding. "It's valid," he said curtly. Turning back to the clerks, his tone hardened. "So, not only did you fail to properly address the issue, but you also decided to treat a paying guest with blatant disrespect." The clerks paled, their smug attitudes vanishing entirely. Leila couldn't suppress her curiosity any longer. "Who are you?" she asked. The man glanced at her, his expression softening slightly. "Michael Hughes," he replied, "owner of this hotel." A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only by the faint click of someone's phone camera. The clerks looked like they wished the marble floor would swallow them whole. Michael's voice dropped, cold and commanding. "Follow me, Mom. Let's get this sorted out properly." Michael Hughes' authoritative presence seemed to dissolve the tension in the room as he escorted Leila to a private office just off the lobby. The spacious room, decorated with dark wood paneling and tasteful artwork, contrasted sharply with the chaos she had just endured. "Please have a seat," Michael said, gesturing to a leather armchair. Leila hesitated for a moment, still processing the sudden shift in her situation, but eventually settled into the chair. Michael took the seat opposite her, his gaze unwavering. "I want to sincerely apologize for what happened out there. That behavior is unacceptable, and I assure you it doesn't reflect the values of this hotel." Leila nodded, her calm demeanor masking the storm of emotions swirling within her. "Thank you for stepping in," she said, her voice steady. "But I can't ignore how they treated me. It wasn't just about the reservation. It felt personal." Michael's jaw tightened. It was personal. I overheard enough to know that. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "If you're willing, I'd like to hear every detail of how they treated you." Leila recounted the encounter, her voice measured but firm. She described the dismissive attitudes, the snide remarks, and the pointed refusal to assist her even after she provided proof of her reservation. Michael listened intently, his expression growing darker with each word. When she finished, he exhaled deeply. "I'll be handling this personally," he said. "This hotel has always prided itself on inclusivity and respect, and I won't tolerate anyone undermining that. Those two clerks will face immediate consequences." Leila's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not looking for anyone to lose their job," she said, "but I do want to ensure this doesn't happen to someone else. What if I hadn't stood my ground? What if no one had been there to step in?" Michael nodded, his respect for her evident. "You're absolutely right. Addressing this incident is only part of the solution. I need to ensure that every staff member here understands the values we uphold and the consequences of failing to meet them." He reached for a notepad on the desk and began jotting down notes. "This will include mandatory sensitivity training for all staff, immediate policy reviews, and a direct apology from the clerks involved. You'll receive a written apology as well, along with a full refund for your stay." Leila raised an eyebrow. "That's a good start," she said, her tone measured. "But actions speak louder than words. You'll be watching to see how this unfolds." Michael offered a small smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Before they could continue, there was a knock at the door. Michael called for the person to enter, and a woman in a crisp black uniform stepped inside, carrying a tray with 2 glasses of water. She placed them on the desk and quietly exited. Michael picked up a glass and offered it to Leila. "You've had a long day? Let's get you settled into your room. And if there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to let me know." Leila accepted the glass but didn't drink immediately. "Thank you. I appreciate everything you've done so far. But I have to ask why." Michael's brow furrowed slightly. "Why what? Why are you going out of your way to make this right?" she asked. Most people in your position would have brushed it off or delegated it to someone else. He leaned back in his chair, his expression contemplative. "Because it's personal for me too," he admitted. "My wife faced similar treatment years ago when she first moved to this country. She wore a hijab too, and it's one of the reasons I bought this hotel to create a place where everyone feels welcome." Leila's eyes widened slightly. "I see. That explains a lot." Michael's smile returned, softer this time. "It's not just business. It's about doing what's right. Now let's get you to your room." As they left the office, Michael led Leila back into the lobby. The air seemed lighter, the earlier tension replaced with a sense of resolution. But as they approached the elevators, Leila noticed the two clerks standing off to the side, their faces pale and their postures rigid. Michael paused and turned to them. "Wait here," he said to Leila before walking over to the clerks. Though she couldn't hear their conversation, the sharp gestures and stern expressions left no doubt that they were being reprimanded. When he returned, he gave Leila an encouraging nod. "Let's get you settled," he said, pressing the button for the elevator. As the doors closed behind them, Leila felt a mix of relief and cautious optimism. She wasn't sure what the future held for the hotel or its staff, but for the first time that day she felt seen and respected. The elevator chimed, and the doors slid open to reveal a luxurious hallway. Michael guided her to room 312, unlocking the door with a key card and stepping aside to let her enter first. "Welcome to your room, Ms. Asghar," he said with a smile. "Here's anything you need. My direct line is on the phone. Don't hesitate to call." Leila stepped inside, taking in the elegant furnishings and the view of the city skyline through the large windows. She turned back to Michael, offering a genuine smile. "Thank you. Truly." He inclined his head. "It's the least I can do. Enjoy your stay." As the door closed behind him, Leila set her suitcase down and sat on the edge of the plush bed. She stared out at the glittering city lights, her mind racing with thoughts about the day's events. There was still much to process, but for now, she allowed herself a moment of peace. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge not just the hotel's values, but her own strength and resolve. Leila woke the next morning to a soft glow of sunlight filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her room. For a moment, she lay still, trying to shake off the lingering remnants of yesterday's stress. Despite the plush comfort of the bed and the serene view of the city, her mind kept drifting back to the confrontation in the lobby. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking her reverie. A message from an unknown number popped up. "Ms. Asghar, this is Michael Hughes. I wanted to personally check in and let you know the staff involved have been placed on immediate leave pending an internal review. If you have any further concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. Wishing you a productive day at your conference." Leila appreciated the gesture, but her thoughts were tinged with skepticism. Was this genuine accountability or just an attempt at damage control? With a sigh, she placed the phone back on the nightstand and began preparing for the day. Downstairs, the lobby bustled with morning activity. Guests lined up at the front desk. Bellhops wheeled luggage carts to and fro, and the scent of fresh coffee wafted through the air. Leila stepped out of the elevator, her emerald hijab catching the sunlight. She noticed a few curious glances but ignored them, holding her head high. At the concierge desk, a young woman greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Ms. Asghar. Mr. Hughes mentioned you might need assistance today. Is there anything I can arrange for you?" Surprised by the attentiveness, Leila shook her head. "Thank you, but I'm fine. Just heading to the conference." "Of course," the concierge replied. "If you need transportation or directions, let us know. Have a great day." As Leila stepped out into the crisp morning air, she couldn't help but reflect on how quickly the hotel's tone had shifted. It was a stark contrast to the previous day, but she remained cautious. Words were easy, real change was harder to come by. At the conference venue, a grand auditorium buzzing with attendees, Leila found herself immersed in the energy of the event. The theme breaking barriers, building inclusive communities resonated deeply. Speaker after speaker shared stories of resilience, activism, and the fight for equity. During a panel discussion, a woman on stage recounted her experience of being denied service at a restaurant due to her hijab. Leila's breath caught as the story mirrored her own ordeal. The audience erupted into applause as the woman finished, declaring, "Our voices matter. Our stories matter." Leila's fingers itched to write something down to capture this moment of solidarity and empowerment. Instead, she found herself pulling out her phone and typing a brief note. Have you ever faced prejudice or exclusion? Share your story. Your voice deserves to be heard. Later, during a break, Leila uploaded the note as a post on social media, accompanied by a reflection on her experience at the hotel. She hesitated before hitting post, unsure of the response it might receive. But as the notifications began rolling in, the outpouring of support was overwhelming. Comments from strangers and friends alike flooded her screen. I've been through something similar. It's exhausting, but we can't stay silent. Thank you for sharing this. People need to know these things still happen. How did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone in your position? Back at the hotel that evening, Leila's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from Michael Hughes. He had shared her post, adding his own comment. Thank you for shedding light on this issue, Ms. Asghar. As the owner of the Ridgewood Hotel, I am committed to ensuring this incident becomes a catalyst for meaningful change. To anyone who has experienced similar treatment, your voice matters, and we're listening. Leila stared at the screen, a mix of emotions swirling within her. She appreciated Michael's public acknowledgement, but the road to genuine change still felt uncertain. As she prepared for bed that night, her thoughts lingered on the day's events. Sharing her story had felt like a risk, but it also felt like a step forward. She couldn't predict where this journey would lead, but she was determined to keep moving forward. And for the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel hope. What do you think? Can sharing our experiences truly drive change? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. The next morning, Leila woke to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. At first, she thought it was her alarm, but when she picked it up, she saw dozens of notifications. Her post from the previous day had gone viral overnight. Comments and messages poured in from people sharing their own experiences. Some thanked her for speaking out, while others expressed outrage at the discrimination she had faced. Leila scrolled through the comments, her emotions swinging between gratitude and a deep sadness at how common such stories were. One message in particular caught her eye. It was from a reporter who wanted to interview her about her experience at the hotel and the broader implications of discrimination in the hospitality industry. Leila hesitated. Did she want to go public with her story? Was she ready for that level of scrutiny? She placed the phone down and took a deep breath. Whatever she decided, she knew it had to be for the right reasons, not just for herself, but for the countless others who had faced similar treatment. Later that morning, Leila found herself in the hotel's restaurant, sitting at a table near the large windows that overlooked the city. The sunlight streaming in felt warm and reassuring as she sipped her coffee and watched the city come alive. Michael Hughes appeared at her table, carrying a folder and a polite smile. "Good morning, Ms. Asghar," he said, taking the seat across from her. "I hope you're finding your stay more comfortable now." Leila nodded. "Thank you. It has been much better, but I'm still processing everything that happened." Michael's expression grew serious. "I completely understand. That's why I wanted to speak with you again. I've started implementing some changes here, and I'd like to share them with you." He opened the folder, revealing a set of documents. First, we're conducting a full review of our staff training programs. Effective immediately, all employees will undergo mandatory diversity and sensitivity training. Additionally, we've partnered with a local organization that specializes in workplace inclusivity to help us create a more welcoming environment for all our guests. Leila scanned the documents, impressed by the level of detail. "This looks promising," she said. "But how will you ensure these changes last? It's easy to make a big show of improvements after an incident, but real change takes sustained effort." Michael nodded, his gaze steady. "You're absolutely right. That's why we're also establishing an advisory board made up of community leaders and advocates. They'll help us stay accountable and ensure our policies evolve with the needs of our guests. Leila leaned back in her chair, considering his words. It's a strong start, she said. But I'll be honest with you, Mr. Hughes. True inclusivity isn't just about policies and training. It's about the culture you cultivate every day. Michael's smile was small but genuine. I couldn't agree more. That's why I'm asking for your help. Your post yesterday has sparked an important conversation, and I believe your perspective could guide us in the right direction. Leila was taken aback. You want my help? Yes, he said earnestly. If you're willing, I'd like to invite you to be part of the advisory board. Your voice could help us ensure these changes are meaningful and lasting. She hesitated, overwhelmed by the offer. It was a significant responsibility, but it also felt like an opportunity to make a real impact. You'll need some time to think about it, she said finally. Of course, Michael replied. Take all the time you need, and if there's anything else I can do to support you, please don't hesitate to ask. As Michael left, Leila's phone buzzed again. It was the reporter following up on her earlier message. Leila stared at the screen, her mind racing. Should she share her story on a broader platform? What would it mean for her and for others who had been silenced? She took a deep breath and typed out a reply. I'd be happy to speak with you. This conversation is too important to ignore. As she hit send, Leila felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her journey wasn't just about addressing what had happened to her, it was about paving the way for others to feel seen, respected, and valued. Leila stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace that evening, the city lights stretching endlessly before her. The chill in the air was tempered by the warm glow of string lights hanging above. She'd come up here to think, away from the noise of notifications and the weight of decisions looming over her. The offer to join the advisory board was significant, but it wasn't something she'd anticipated. Her phone buzzed softly in her pocket, breaking her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw another wave of comments on her viral post. One in particular caught her attention. You're brave to speak out. I stayed silent when something similar happened to me, and I regret it every day. Leila stared at the words, a pang of empathy washing over her. She had been silent in the past, too, convincing herself that staying quiet was the easier path. But this time felt different. She couldn't shake the feeling that her voice mattered more than ever. The next morning, Leila met with Michael Hughes again, this time in the hotel's executive conference room. The space was sleek and modern, its large windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Seated at the long table were a mix of hotel staff and representatives from local advocacy groups. Michael stood at the head of the table, addressing the group. Thank you all for coming. As you know, we're here to discuss actionable steps to make the Ridgewood Hotel a truly inclusive space. Ms. Asghar has graciously agreed to join us today and share her perspective. Leila felt a wave of nerves as all eyes turned toward her. Taking a deep breath, she stood and began to speak. Thank you for including me in this conversation. I've thought a lot about my experience here, and while it was deeply upsetting, it also highlighted a broader issue that extends beyond this hotel. Discrimination, whether overt or subtle, is something too many people face daily. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Change starts with accountability. It's not enough to acknowledge mistakes. There needs to be a genuine commitment to doing better. That means training, policies, and above all, a culture where everyone feels valued and respected. The room was silent as her words sank in. Then, one of the advocacy group representatives spoke up. Thank you, Ms. Asghar. Your experience is a stark reminder of why this work is so important. Michael, you mentioned plans for an advisory board. Can you elaborate? Michael nodded. Yes, we're forming a board that will meet regularly to review our policies, training programs, and guest feedback. The goal is to ensure we're not just meeting but exceeding standards of inclusivity. Ms. Asghar has been invited to join as a founding member. Leila glanced around the room, taking in the mix of hopeful and determined expressions. She felt the weight of responsibility, but also the potential for meaningful change. Later that day, as the meeting concluded, Michael approached Leila. "You spoke beautifully in there," he said. The team was genuinely moved. Leila smiled faintly. "Thank you." "It's still overwhelming, but I'm glad to contribute." "If there's one thing I've learned," Michael said, "it's that change doesn't happen overnight. But it's people like you who make it possible." As they parted ways, Leila's phone buzzed with another notification. This time, it was a private message from someone she didn't recognize. "Your story inspired me to stand up for myself at work today. Thank you for showing me it's possible to make a difference." Leila read the message twice, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of clarity. Her journey wasn't just about confronting injustice, it was about empowering others to do the same. The hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a space buzzing with energy. Guests from Divi. Earth's backgrounds mingled, their laughter and conversations blending with the soft hum of live jazz playing in the corner. The evening event, titled Voices of Change, was part of the hotel's effort to showcase its renewed commitment to inclusivity. Leila stood near a side table, nursing a sparkling water and observing the crowd. She'd spent the day preparing for this event, unsure of what to expect. Michael Hughes had personally asked her to deliver a short speech about her experience and the importance of accountability. Public speaking wasn't her strength, but she knew the message was too important to shy away from. As the room settled, Michael stepped onto the small stage at the front, his confident demeanor commanding attention. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice clear and steady. "Tonight is about more than just celebrating progress. It's about acknowledging where we've fallen short and committing to doing better." He paused, scanning the room. "I'd like to invite someone very special to the stage. Ms. Leila Asghar has been a catalyst for change not just within this hotel, but for everyone who's heard her story. Please join me in welcoming her." Applause erupted as Leila approached the stage, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath and stepped behind the podium, the microphone amplifying the gentle rustle of her notes. "Thank you, Michael," she began, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "And thank you to everyone here tonight. When I first walked into this hotel, I didn't expect to find myself standing here. What started as a deeply painful experience has turned into an opportunity for growth, not just for me, but for all of us." She glanced at the audience, locking eyes with a few attentive faces. Discrimination and bias are not issues confined to one place or industry. They're systemic, ingrained in ways we often don't realize until we're forced to confront them. What matters is how we respond when we're faced with these moments. Leila paused, her confidence growing. It would have been easy for me to leave that day and never look back. But what happened here isn't unique to me. It's something many people experience, often without anyone to speak up for them. That's why I stayed. That's why I'm here." The room was silent, the weight of her words palpable. "True change doesn't come from policies alone," she continued. "It comes from people, from us holding each other accountable and refusing to accept the status quo. Tonight, we're not just celebrating progress. We're committing to the work that still needs to be done." As she concluded, the applause was immediate and heartfelt. Michael stepped forward, shaking her hand as she left the stage. After the event, Leila found herself surrounded by guests eager to share their thoughts. Some thanked her for her bravery, while others shared their own stories of facing prejudice. The connection she felt with these strangers was profound, each conversation reinforcing her decision to take a stand. "Miss Asghar," a soft voice said, cutting through the crowd. Leila turned to see a young woman wearing a similar emerald green hijab. "Your story meant so much to me. I've always been afraid to speak up when I've faced discrimination. but hearing you tonight gave me hope. Thank you." Leila's throat tightened as she clasped the woman's hands. "Thank you for telling me that. Your voice matters, and I hope you know you're not alone." Later that night, back in her hotel room, Leila reflected on the evening. The weight of the day's events settled on her, but so did a sense of fulfillment. She had come to the hotel as a guest, but she was leaving as a part of something bigger. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Michael. "Leila, thank you for tonight. Your words resonated deeply with everyone in the room. This is only the beginning, and I'm grateful to have you as part of this journey." She set the phone due, a small smile forming on her lips. She didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt certain she was exactly where she needed to be. What did you think of Leila's speech? Have you ever been inspired to take a stand for something important? Share your experiences in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that challenge and inspire. Leila woke early on her final morning at the Ridgewood Hotel. The sunrise painted the city in hues of gold and orange, and she felt a deep sense of calm. The events of the past few days had been transformative, not just for the hotel, but for herself as well. She had walked into this space as an unwelcome guest and was leaving as a voice for change. As she packed her suitcase, her phone buzzed with another message. This time, it was from a community leader she admired, someone who had seen her viral post and reached out with an invitation. "Leila, I've been following your story. Your courage is inspiring, and I believe you could make an even greater impact. Would you consider joining a national initiative aimed at addressing systemic discrimination in public spaces?" She stared at the screen, her thoughts swirling. It was another unexpected opportunity, one she'd never imagined when she arrived at the hotel. Yet, it felt like a natural next step, a way to continue the work she had started. Before leaving, she made her way to the lobby, where Michael Hughes was waiting to see her off. He extended a hand, his expression one of genuine gratitude. "Ms. Asghar," he began, "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. Your honesty and determination have set us on a path to becoming better. I hope you know you've left an indelible mark here." Leila shook his hand, offering a warm smile. "Thank you, Michael. I appreciate everything you've done to make this right, but this is just the beginning. Change takes time, and it takes commitment." Michael nodded. "We're ready for that commitment. And if there's ever anything we can do to support you, please don't hesitate to reach out." With that, Leila turned to leave, her suitcase rolling behind her. As she stepped through the grand glass doors, she felt the cool morning air wash over her. The city bustled with life, each person moving through their day unaware of the small revolution that had taken place within those walls. In the days and weeks that followed, Leila's story continued to gain traction. Her viral post sparked discussions in workplaces, schools, and households across the country. People shared their own experiences, and the momentum grew into something bigger than she could have imagined. The Ridgewood Hotel became a case study for transformation, implementing the initiatives Michael had promised. Reports of improved guest experiences and a more inclusive environment began to surface, validating the efforts of the advisory board Leila had helped shape. As for Leila, she accepted the invitation to join the national initiative. Her journey took her to cities and communities where she shared her story, listened to others, and advocated for systemic change. Each step was a reminder of the power of one voice and the ripple effect it could create. One evening, months later, Leila found herself back in her apartment, scrolling through messages of support and updates on the progress being made. She paused on a message from a young girl who wrote, "Because of you, I didn't stay quiet when my teacher treated me unfairly. Thank you for giving me the courage to speak up." Tears welled in Leila's eyes as she typed a reply. "Thank you for sharing that with me. Your courage inspires me too. Keep standing tall." As she set her phone down, Leila gazed out the window at the city lights. The world was far from perfect, but she knew that with each story told, each stand taken, they were building something better together. How has Leila's journey resonated with you? What steps can we all take to make our communities more inclusive? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of courage and change.